So this is a panel on Agile IT pilot that we're doing. So this is a group, the two on my left, this is Jeff Donahue and Lisa Gluffling from the Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation. And on the far left is John Tanner from SRA. He's our Agile expert. You can probably tell just by looking at him, right? But we wanted to have this little session today because we're trying something different, and we thought it might be interesting to other folks in the government who are trying to do the same thing. So just to lay a little bit of background for you, I'm from the Office of Federal Procurement Policy. My name's Joni Newhart, and my boss, Ann Rung, who's the administrator, wrote a memo in December 2014 called Transforming the Marketplace. And it turns out it was a very forward-leaning memo, and if you haven't read it, I definitely encourage you to read it. It can be found on www.fai.gov. It can be found on OFPP website. It's not hard to find if you just put the title in. But one of the tenets of that memo was to put tools and training in place to push agile procurements. And this is part of a broader effort to improve IT procurements ever since the unmentionable procurement happened, healthcare.gov. So the whole government is actually pivoted to trying to make IT better. We spend $80 billion a year in this space, and so we all think it's pretty important. But so interestingly, in order to build digital agile capability, we're doing a separate program. We've issued a challenge on challenge.gov, and we're hoping to get transformative training and development program ideas from industry so that we can have not a classroom training to teach these folks, mostly 1102s at this point, but also experiential training. I don't think you can learn this by going to a classroom and then instant expert. So we want to have a little bit of classroom maybe, but hands-on, work in an actual digital project, and that challenge closes on Monday. But so as part of that challenge, we were doing a reverse industry day, and our friends Jeff and Steve from PBGC came up to us and said, hey, we have a procurement and we think Agile is the answer. Can we be a pilot? And that really resonated with us because, we don't have a lot of tools out there, as you may have noticed, on Agile. We don't have a lot of training. And we thought this would be a great pilot where we could see what works for them. And then we hired a great contractor, that's John Tanner, to kind of work with them to teach them Agile. And so this is that story. We're not completed yet, so there's more to come in the story, but I just thought it would be very interesting to those of you starting to try and go down this path. So we're going to start with Jeff. And Jeff, tell us just a little bit about PBGC, just to lay some groundwork, and then tell us why you felt it was imperative to go Agile.
Thank you, Joni. I'll start asking a question, then I'll answer it. Who here has heard of PBGC? Anybody? Okay, I'm impressed. I was going to say maybe one or two people. I'll give you a little bit of a background about PBGC, and then I'll talk about the Agile imperative for PBGC. PBGC itself is a Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation, and we protect the pension benefits of more than 41 million Americans in private sector pension plans, and the agency is responsible for more than 1.5 million people in failed pension plans. PBGC receives no taxpayer dollars. It operates on finances by insurance premiums, investment income, and with assets recovered from failed plans. That means PBGC uses apportioned funds and not appropriated funds. However, we choose to follow appropriation law and follow the Federal Acquisition Regulation, the FAR. PBGC was founded by ERISA in 1974, which is the Employee Retirement Income Security Act. And basically, we encourage communication and continuation of maintenance of private sector defined benefit pension plans, provide timely and uninterrupted payment of pension plans, and keep pension insurance premiums at a low. So why is Agile imperative to implement at PBGC? If you look at what we're in place to do with regards to pension benefit administration, we have a desire to actively engage end users and stakeholders. We want to gain involvement and buy-in during what we would call our pre-solicitation phase, or the contract portion. We want to clearly communicate and understand at a high level, I'm definitely not technical with IT, the requirements at the outset, and prioritize requirements appropriately. In other words, what do you want and how do you want it? We want to ensure that the decisions are made and that they feature priorities, we have the issues defined, and when we are able to determine what we want, when will the product be ready? So PBGC wanted to gain access to the latest technology quicker. We also wanted to have incorporated into our product production lines tools that are of use today. PBGC's procurement department has a desire to anticipate, facilitate, and embrace change. So when we come and we see the OFPP memorandum on transforming the marketplace, that resonated with us. Why can't we do this? We were looking for an innovative approach that could generate greater efficiencies and also enhance our customer experiences. Therefore, we noticed with a large DM&E project that we have coming up, this would be great for assistance and possibly adapting an agile framework. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Jeff. So let's turn to Lisa, and I was very pleased to meet Lisa when we started this project. Lisa's an actual real Washingtonian. That's pretty impressive. But Lisa, tell us a little bit about your background and your role in this effort.
Sure. Hi, I'm Lisa Gloffling, and I've been in government contracting and federal service for about 12 years, much of it here in this building, so I'm glad to be back. I spent most of my time here at USAID in the Bureau for Management, and the CIO is the chief of their project management office. So I've only really been with PBGC for about 6 months. And so I'm still learning my way around. I think I've met my first actuary. You know, I really didn't have much interaction with actuaries before my work at PBGC. But I work as the division manager for Participant Management Services Division, and I'm the program manager for that program. And at PBGC, we have a very close relationship with our business partners. So I'm a program manager in the CIO's office, but I have a counterpart in the business side of the house in our benefits administration and payment division, and there's a program manager on that side that manages all things business. And we work very, very closely together, and that is you know, one of the great benefits of working at PBGC is that IT business relationship. And so we support, being participant management program managers, my business counterpart and I, we support all of the processes, systems, and tools that support our participants. So we calculate, we value, and we make sure participants are paid. So my role in this was, like I said, I'm new, and we happen to be starting this new project called BCV, Benefit Calculation and Valuation. And as we're starting the planning in this effort, they mentioned an agile procurement. So, you know, being new, and I have somewhat of a low risk tolerance, I jumped on it. I wanted to try something new and be involved in this effort. So when they came to me and said, you know, you're planning, we're trying to start this agile procurement pilot, I said, just sign us up. So that's how I became involved with this effort.
Great. Well, we're glad you did. And Jeff, do you want to expand upon anything regarding your role in the project?
Sure. I can talk about my background a bit and my role with this effort to shed some light into this. So my background is pretty standard. I came from the military and industry, and I was brought up in procurement through base level contracting, kind of buying the pens and pencils, and I moved on to a progression to systems level contracting. While I was at a systems level contracting in the Air Force, I had the opportunity to work on a major weapons system that dealt with a development and a modernization, and in order to get from the development to the modernization, we utilized spiral upgrades. The idea of using modular contracting via FAR Part 39. After I left the military, I worked as a consultant for NATO and had the opportunity to procure a lot of professional and IT services, which led to consultant work here in the DC metro area. I had the opportunity to work on several very large IT system buys and see the trials and tribulations and constraints of buying IT. Eventually, I had an opportunity to take my current role in March of 2014 as the Chief of Contract Administration for PBGC. So the point behind this is not to say, hey, here's who I am, here's what I've done, but to show you that I've kind of had a forward-leaning industry best practices and improvement of processes look to try to take lessons learned and to better our overall procurement process and experience. I had the opportunity to attend the January 2015 OFPP Reverse Industry Day and the inaugural, what I will call the Federal-Wide Buyers Club as well, and I noticed an opportunity for PBGC to change its processes and procedures for procuring IT. So we reached out to Joni in order to ask for assistance, and my role went from what I would call an active participant. Remember, I'm not the IT type. I could barely, back in the day, program a VCR to show the proper time, to what I would call a sponsor for PBGC's procurement department for our agile efforts.
Great, thank you. So, John, you've escaped so far. So we're going to turn to you.
Hiding on the end, yeah.
So I first met John during this effort, and at our first meeting, I was really impressed with his extreme knowledge of Agile and just his demeanor in talking to a group of people that, several of which were like, I don't know about this. I don't really know. And he'd go, blah, 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 and they'd go, oh, well, okay, maybe.
I mean, that's literally what I do. I go, blah, blah, blah.
So, John, tell us a little bit about your background and how you got so good at this. And then, is the work at PBGC typical for a government agency? And also, if you could throw in what trends you're seeing in Agile across the government? Well,
Sure. So, yeah, my name's John Tanner. I am the director of SRA's Agile technical practices. So my work includes running a very large Agile community practice, almost 1,000 members now. We have contracts ranging just about every federal agency out there. I don't know one that we're not. Prior to taking this position, I worked as a lead software developer at the White House Communications Agency, where we introduced Agile. Before that, I was a project lead over at the 480th Intelligence Wing in Langley, where we also introduced Agile for the first time to that program. So if you've done anything in Intel or with the administration, you've probably touched some of my software, and I apologize for that. But it's out there. It's in the wild. What was the follow-on?
is your work at PBGC typical for a government agency trying to implement it?
No, it's not. We're seeing a lot more of it. And I was just writing a quick note to myself to try to remember all the agencies that are touching Agile. 18F obviously is the big player. They've created the digital services strategy. If you haven't heard anything about 18F, now's time to go look it up. They wrote TechFAR. They're doing great things with consulting. We've talked with them about this project. They're fantastic people. And they really were, the Presidential Fellowship grew out of that project that we will not name. But so we see them starting to reach out. You got Mark Schwartz over at USCIS, who's really pushing the envelope, wants to go continuous flow, continuous delivery, that sort of thing. We've got CDC, the Management Information Systems Office. They have a 2020 vision for having continuous delivery through Agile, from business value all the way out. So we're seeing it grow, but as far as typical across the agency, this is the first time I've seen, well before a procurement comes out, bringing Agile in. So the problem we have in the industry is we will go to develop software and we'll implement Agile at the end. We'll put it just where the software is being developed. Agile is supposed to connect the business value all the way out through delivery. If we only put the processes in at the end, we lose a lot of the value of that system. So by starting pre-procurement, we can actually build out the Agile backlogs you need to get the good value, to help the developers understand what they're working on, get good feedback loops to speed the whole thing up. So what we see in government is pieces and parcels put together where one group says, yeah, I'll really do this. This is great. Lisa goes, yeah. And then Jeff goes, no. And then it doesn't work right. You know, it's got to be a whole system. So I'm happy with this one because it is a whole system. It's all coming together.
Terrific. So what we plan to do with what we learned from this pilot is develop some tools and maybe some samples, and we're going to put them on the acquisition hallway. And if you have been here for 2 days, you probably heard about it from my boss who spoke yesterday. But so for those of you who don't know, the acquisition hallway is at hallways.cap, C-A-P as in Paul, .gsa.gov. So you have to be a government employee, use a PIV card to get into it, but the hallways, right on the first page, there's something called TechFAR Hub, and that's where some of this stuff will be placed. That's where the TechFAR handbook is, the digital services playbook. So we hope to keep populating it with artifacts from this effort and other efforts as well. So I'm going to just take a quick pause because we really welcome your questions and see if you all have any questions at this point. We like this to be informal, and if you don't ask us any questions, we'll probably start asking you questions. And also to put in a plug for Mark Schwartz, he speaks next at 4 o'clock. I'm not sure what room, but I haven't met him before, so I'm going to go see that as well. So no, yes, ma'am, Tara. I knew I could count on you.
Not a problem. So I'm wondering how this relationship was established with John and how he was brought into the group, if there was an existing contract vehicle. What kind of arrangement do you have with this office trying to undertake this? Was it competed? You know, just curious how you set up this working group.
So I think I can answer that. So we had a contract with SRA to do something else, and it turns out we didn't want to do that. So we had this contract sitting there with some money, and then during Reverse Industry Day, I met one of John's colleagues who was an expert in Agile, and I said, oh, we have this existing vehicle. Maybe we could play matchmaker here. So that, you know, of course we like competition, but in this case, we happen to have this contract sitting there.
mean, the competition's good. It's good for us, too. I enjoy the competition because it keeps us sharp. The industry has suffered for a very long time because we haven't competed well on this front, right? We see some competitors out there that treat it like a staffing problem. Agile is a staffing problem. We'll buy a Scrum Master, we'll buy some developers, it's a staffing issue. It needs to be treated like a holistic industry problem. We want to create better software for the government. We can change the world. That's the beauty of this room, the people collected, right? You've got people in the administration, you've got people that handle pension, you've got people, Secret Service, you've got people at the Border Patrol. There are people all over federal that are doing this stuff. And what we do to make this better literally changes the world. And it's a very powerful thing, and that's why I enjoy it. So I really do want the competition. I hope more people enter the space because I keep showing up for a battle of the wits and there's nobody there. So. Yeah.
So you have an interesting perspective because we've a lot of government discussion. So as a contracting officer, what should I ask from you in a request for quotation or a request for proposal that will allow you to present your area of expertise and be able to key us into the things that you offer from the agile, perspective? Like, I don't know if it's what's in the proposal or how you think you should be evaluated. I'm just curious.
So we've had a lot of discussions about this, Jeff, and I'll let you chime in here in a second, but one of the things I really, really encourage is face-to-face meetings, industry days. Let's talk. Traditional RFPs and RFIs are an exercise in creative writing. We sit down with some of our best authors who have not touched execution in 20 years, and they write a really good story of how we're going to do this. And there are common phrases in those rooms like, we'll figure it out in execution, right? We don't want that. So if we can put proof of execution up front, that helps all of us. It reduces our costs. I don't have to have 30 people writing on a Word doc. I can have 5 people building software, and then we all get better at it. But you want to talk about the industry day coming up, Jeff?
Sure, I can definitely do that. And this kind of goes into the overall approach, and I would say how we're going so far with our procurement. And keep in mind, obviously, I'm going to keep this high level for procurement sensitivity, broad-based. Here are some ideas and some thought processes. When we look at this, if I were to say, hey, if we were looking at a regular waterfall type of procurement, is this a success? I would probably kind of chuckle and laugh and say, absolutely not. It's not. But if you look at it as a pilot program and we're talking about exploring agile frameworks, I have stopped short saying methodologies, but frameworks, I would say that this is a remarkable success in the fact that here we are during a generation of a requirement, and we're going to be engaging industry not once, but probably 2 or 3 different times. But more to the point, we're going to be trying to get something from industry. We're going to sit here and state that, okay, here's what we're going to look at doing. We're going to have an initial industry day. Let's have a discussion. Let's take that a step further now. What about the idea of like challenge.gov? Let's have a challenge. Give me something. Give me what keeps you up at night for your customer. Great. How can I translate that into a possible requirement? This is the change that we've been undertaking by being forward-leaning and, for lack of a better term, agile, by listening to our stakeholders, one of which is John.
Yeah, so it's about having that conversation up front. If we go through the creative writing process and the down select process, and it takes us 2 or 3 years, and we pick somebody, and then they're put on, and we've got a base year, and then we go ahead and exercise the option because it's too quick to find somebody else, we've lost so much time to realize that they weren't the right people to do the work. So if we can actually connect the user needs and the developers up front, I think it makes the whole system better. I think that's the whole point, right, Johnny?
I think so. So, Lisa, can you give us your perspective on how it's going?
Sure. So, as I mentioned, we're the pilot project, the guinea pig, benefit calculation evaluation, and our project manager, Elizabeth Nolan, is here in the audience with us today.
Shout out.
So, the BCV project has had its challenges in the past. So, for about I'd say anywhere from 10 to 15 years, they've been trying to find ways to modernize it that haven't been as successful as we'd like it to be. The benefit calculation evaluation project is fairly complicated. It has, we manage 3,000 trusteed plans, and it's actually a suite of tools, and we're really on our main calculation engine is Excel and Access databases. So we have this kind of outdated limited technology. We have very complex calculations, that vary across these plans that we trustee, and we haven't found the right way to modernize. So because of the history of the project and having problems with previous acquisitions and previous modernization efforts, we thought that just even looking at any type of new way to do this project would be good. So because of our, we also at PBGC have been doing agile development, and I think we've been successful. So we have one very large project that is doing a scaled agile framework, agile methodology, and we have seen great benefits with that project in both the quality, the delivery, the timeliness, and so because of our experience using agile on actual development projects, we were able to also then see the potential values of using an agile procurement from the very beginning with a brand new project. So we see a success because, and it's because, like I mentioned at the very beginning, because we do have that business IT partnership. I can't stress, how important that is in both the agile development effort and in this agile procurement effort in starting things out. You really need to have that partnership to make this a success. So we're still learning, like they said, we're still in the very beginning of the effort, but what I see as the value, even in this very early stage, is we're looking at new ways. We're looking at new ways of trying to do this, and we're looking at new ways to present ourselves to the vendor community, right? We've been trying this, and we keep getting kind of the same responses that aren't meeting our needs. So we're trying to, through this effort, we can find new ways to present it, and also we're hoping that we can get new vendors to participate as well. So we hope to get new people with new ideas into this space working with us.
Great. So as we have started exploring this whole agile and all that, we talked with a lot of people at different agencies, and some people that were really forward-leaning and doing it, I said, well, how did you do that in your agency? It's hard sometimes when you introduce something new and different, and one of the people said that it came down from the agency leadership. So I guess the president had talked to the department heads, talked to the agency head, and said, we are going to do this. And so that person came back and said, we're going to do this, which really helped with top cover. But tell us your experience. So you're going the other way, I think, to leadership, and what kind of support are you getting?
Well, from my perspective, we are going the other way, but it is because of the agile development efforts that our leadership also is very supportive of. So our agile development, they're aware of agile, from our executives, from our CIO to the business side, the Chief of Benefits Administration. We're meeting weekly with them and explaining to them, our status of agile, and they continue to learn how agile development works. So our leadership is starting to understand the principles and how agile can work in government. So we have that leadership kind of understanding. And we've actually brought in another lesson kind of learned in both the agile development and leadership buy-in. We've had agile coaches come in as well to coach and help bring in the outside perspective to leaders. So it's not just the project that is explaining this, but we've had people come in and try to explain it from the outside and executive perspective. So we're hitting it from both sides. Yes, agile procurement is new, but we have the understanding and the leadership buy-in from the top.
Great. Agile coaches is a great idea. Go Agile, right? How about Jeff? Do you have any perspective on that?
Sure. I think the biggest thing, obviously, and I hate to say, giving you advice, comes down to being open to change and looking at and seeing what options and tools you have that are out there. Obviously, you look at a lot of the guidance that's coming out from OFPP. They mentioned the tech FAR earlier, and using industry standards and best practices to our advantages. Those are all crucial when you're looking at the execution and setting up, some form of whether it's DM&E or software development effort. I think you need to focus on the transformative vision as well and invest in the skills and resources, i.e. the training that's required to get to your desired objectives. The key being is what is your desired objective, not the A through Z punch list of here's what I need to get things done. Realizing that we need creativity in our approaches so we can have a very effective and efficient response from industry, to engage industry and to ensure that industry is a true partner as opposed to, well, I'm paying you to do this, and if you fail, why did you just fail? Let them fail, let them go at it, because when we're talking about agile, great, here's an objective, go for that particular objective. we need to realize that the short-term wins are very important to strive for, and those are things that the leadership can look at and point to and state that, well, this is great. We met this objective right here. We never thought we'd meet that particular objective. But also keep in mind what the overall strategy and your plan is to ensure that you have the long-term direction and that you're on track and that it's met. But you also need to realize that you have to identify the right mix of the internal and external stakeholders. If I would have looked at this particular project that we're working on, say, a year ago, I would have said, well, how in the world are we going to do this? How can we guarantee success? Well, we can't guarantee success unless we change. So we went out and we said, well, what stakeholders do we need to have internally as well as externally? And it kind of led to a question for me. Does everyone on your ownership and senior leadership team see the same need and have the same sense of urgency and buy-in to use an agile approach to technology acquisitions? That's kind of where we're coming from at PBGC in the procurement department. We want to enable our end users to get what they want when they want it, but also to state that industry can provide amazing responses to us.
Great. So I think you're seeing a theme here. There's a lot of talk about end users, really key to get them involved in the requirements. Also, the teaming approach. I don't know that I've seen that many teams of IT and contracting folks that work so closely together, so I'm really happy to see that. Let's take another pause for questions. Any questions at this point? And I'll warn Jeff Pitts that at the end of the session, I'm going to ask you to ask a question. Okay, so we're going to have one more question, so think about what questions you all have. So Jeff gave us some good advice for those of you in the audience thinking about implementing Agile. I think one thing to keep in mind is the environment is ripe for something like this because our budgets are down, we're looking for new ways to get the mission done, and it's a good time to bring up some new ideas. I think you would get support for it. But Lisa, do you have any advice for those wanting to implement Agile?
Well, I'll stress again, the relationship between IT and the business is just critical because you really need to have your product owners, and they are a critical component. This needs to be people's jobs. I mean, IT can't just leave the room and go do something. It has to be a constant partnership with your business and your product owners. The strong executive sponsor support, I think, in the government environment is very critical. So, as I mentioned, working with the coach and getting executive buy-in for this new approach. But I think there's enough information out there that, we can really, like she said, with our, having to meet the mission with, budgets declining, this is a good new way and a new method to be able to create value. So, I think also another thing is trust in your staffs and your team. That's something that I think is very important for an Agile. Trust your team. So they're working together every day on a constant basis, and Agile is about transparency. So you're going to see, you know what you're going to get in an Agile environment. So trust that they're going to be able to do it. And just have an open mind. So things aren't always going to go smoothly, especially as you begin this process. Be flexible, be innovative, be open to change and doing things differently, because that's what I think it's really going to take.
That's great advice. And last but certainly not least, John, how about some advice?
The government, the customer has to own the transformation. So we see a lot where contractors push the transformation, or the government says, let's go Agile, give us a process, and go do some work. The customer has to own this for it to work. Ultimately, you have to be the ones that give the buy-in, the commitment to make this work. And it has to be all levels of your organization. You can't just have pockets of it and see the value. You're going to get a disjointed system that way. So to Lisa's point, you have to have the buy-in everywhere. Yeah. And then somebody mentioned earlier coaches. What Agile coaches are, they're people you bring in. You build within your organization, you bring from outside, you get with 18F, they have consultants. You do something to get Agile people on board that can talk with your executives, can talk with your middle managers, your teams, and coach them on how good Agile processes work together. It's an often overlooked step. And the final advice, get training. We all think we know what Agile is. That's okay. We all have a different view of it. If your organization is going Agile, get a baseline training for your organization so you all have the same definition of Agile as you start the transformation. Because there's so many different ways to do it. The important thing is we all know how we're doing it together. Because it is really one mission, one team out there. So we have to work on it together.
Great. And one resource for training in Agile, Tracy Walker, who spoke last session, put on a training Basic Agile 101. It's on the FAI website, www.fai.gov. And there's also the inaugural innovation conference was videotaped. That's on fei.gov. This will be videotaped. So we're starting to get some things out there that might help you spread the word. And now, any more questions? Yes, Elizabeth.
Is there a specific type of project that's a good candidate for Agile procurement?
I can attack it from, I would say, a contracting officer perspective, and I'm sure I'll have a couple, well, maybe this or that from John from the industry perspective. So when I look for Agile, I look at specific types of, say, developmental contracts. So I will look for IT right now, predominant type of contract. There is an unknown as to what is going to be required to get there, or there's not a defined solution to get to that particular point. So providing you an A through Z checklist or predefined gates as to, well, you're going to do this, 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 and this, and the expectation is for you to be able to provide me this at this particular time or that particular time. The key being is I look for DM&E efforts that have been troublesome in the past, that have used traditional waterfall methodologies for procurement that haven't been successful. I take it a step further and I say, as customers, do you have a history of this particular effort not working, and why? How can we change? How can we break this down into more manageable pieces in order to be successful? And if it can be broken down into these manageable modules, more to the point, we can have proper outcomes defined, the proper user stories defined, then we're lining up a case to say maybe this is an agile procurement. But I also look at the one thing also that I have to have buy-in from not only just the end user, but from the leadership as well, from the top down. If I don't have that, it might look good from a contracting perspective to have an agile project, but it's going to fail because of the fact that, like I said, traditional procurement, hey, what we're doing right now might not be considered a success. We have milestones that are shifting. We have activities that are being undertaken. That's what you expect with this. You have to be flexible and adaptable in order to ensure that the end objectives are met.
Yeah, so just to piggyback on what you said there, if you're looking for which project should we go with right away to go to Agile, the riskiest one's the most ill-defined, because Agile is about small incremental development, right? We're developing just as we understand what we need. So the riskier it is, the better a candidate is. It sounds backwards, but with Waterfall, we're trying to develop all at once, right, and get it through the gates all at once. With Agile, we can inspect and adapt as we go. Every project can be managed in an Agile way. It's really just lean manufacturing for software. I mean, it's very well-known practices built from the 1940s up. So it's very well studied, very well understood. It can be used for any project type. It really can. But if you're looking for the quick kill, it's the risky one, the one that you can't define before going to market. That's the best one for it.
Good perspective. So for those of you in the audience contemplating Agile or starting an Agile project, maybe you have some questions on some roadblocks you're seeing or how you might think to proceed.
While we wait for a question, I'd reiterate what John said about the importance of having it be customer driven, so that you really need your federal staff, your project managers, your program managers, your business side program managers, your business side product owners. You can't just contract that out and hope it's going to happen. That needs to happen within, and you need to have, I think, if you're looking for a successful project, it's those federal staff that are committed to make this a success and put their time and effort and energy into it.
Great. So who has a question for these smart folks? Jeff is getting a little worried there. So Jeff, raise your hand. Jeff's going to have a question for us.
So I'm just interested in hearing from each of your perspective, what has been your greatest takeaway from this project specifically? What have you learned from this pilot?
We always look to Jeff first.
I find it interesting. I've gone into this particular pilot or project thinking that I have to be some form of an expert with regards to IT, and I'm the farthest thing from that. And I've realized that when we break things down, larger projects that are extremely complex, into modular pieces, into smaller pieces, I begin to understand what it is that the end user, the customer is looking for, and I'm beginning to understand, oh, well, this is how this particular system works, and it builds up into components, into the overall objectives. So being able to learn how these IT systems work and how they build upon each other for efficiencies has been the biggest thing that I have learned. So where I'm able to see, well, for future efforts, my end users, my project managers, industry are going to be looking for certain functionalities and capabilities based off of these smaller modular parts. So it's really been a learning experience into IT for me as opposed to anything else.
And as we said in the beginning, we're still very early in the process. So we are just gearing up for our first event for this industry day. So trying, again, is probably the flexibility. It's trying to, we've learned that we have to try to get away from thinking about this project as we always have in the past, and trying to get the people together in the room who have been working on this project for years and years and years, and trying to get them to learn to think differently. Like Jeff said, to learn to break it down. Don't think about it as what you've always wanted. You want your standardized database, and you want to migrate all these plans into it, and that's the only way you can think about it. You have to try to coach people and try to think, get them to think differently and change the way they're thinking so that we can break things down into these smaller parts. Even though it's this huge, complex project, it's trying to find that way to break it into pieces that we can start this agile process from the very beginning with the procurement. So I think we're planning for the industry day and having all these meetings and trying to get that change of thought. I think we'll have a lot more lessons learned in the next month, so maybe we can all come back together again.
I think the biggest lesson for me out of this was when we got started, we had a couple starts and stops there, because we would all come into a room and we had different expectations of why we were in the room. So we never sat down and chartered this thing properly at the beginning. We just expected, we all knew what we were doing, and we all had different expectations, which was, it's something new, right? So next time, it would be great if we sat down and had a storming sort of session. Let's charter this thing right, really understand what our vision is, really understand who's driving this thing. And that's my biggest recommendation to you. Don't just go haul into it like we did. Sit down and take a minute to charter it as a project. Because I think we've come to that over time. But it was some very disjointed. We would all walk into just sit around the table and ask each other questions. We're all going, but I'm not here for that today, for like an hour. And then we'd walk away very frustrated. So, but we learned. The other thing I learned was I was able to train a group of lawyers on Agile. So if I can train lawyers, I can train anybody on Agile. This is going to work.
So my takeaway is I work at OMB, and we're used to, telling people what to do, giving out guidance, helping people, right? So in this case, we did that with that memo in December. And then all of a sudden in, I think, February, they came to us and said, hey, we want to do this. And I was like, wow, that's a revelation. So I applaud PBGC and your whole team for taking this on. It's great. But so any more questions? Last chance. Won't get this. Oh, great.
I have a follow-up to the points that you just brought up in terms of governance for the Agile. How did you establish the governance document for this? Because from the outside, it would look just like you said. It would be very disorganized.
So everything that I've done is really followed the tech FAR, which is a document out there. If you haven't spread the tech FAR, please do. It gives a lot of guidance on this. It tells you what funding vehicles, what pricing, how to be compliant with the FAR and go agile through the acquisition process. The guys at 18F did a really good job pulling that together. My role has simply been trying to guide this into that better practice that it's already documented by government out there. It's about bringing it together. So if you want to discuss it offline, I'm more than happy to talk about how that compliance comes together. But the documents are written. They're in draft form, but they're out there and available, all mapping to the FAR. So it's compliant. What we're doing is fully compliant. Even the lawyers had to nod and go, yeah, I guess that is compliant after all. So they left happy, which made me happy. But that's kind of what my role has been, mapping reality to the documentation, the various documentation out there. And that's really what I find my role as a consultant is most. It's not necessarily shaping what you do, it's helping you understand how what you do can be legal, compliant, and actually work in an agile world. So it's all out there, though.
And the biggest thing to keep in mind, too, by way of governance, because that was one of the things that I looked at coming from a procurement perspective. I was really interested, okay, we have FAR Part 39 dealing with modular contracts, how we're going to buy IT procurement. great. I would say that a lot of times the thought process I had was more along the lines of my boss and, well, we have waterfall procurement, we have modular contracting, we can do all these things. But then breaking it down into smaller bits. So all we've really done is define the size of the modules, use modular contracting to its best, use enablers such as the tech FAR, some of the guidance coming out from OFPP, but also realized when we do market research and we engage industry, there are other parts of the FAR that we can use that will also enable us to get what we want to get to. But first and foremost, get past the idea that we have to keep industry at arm's length. Industry needs to be an active collaborator with us. That's all allowable, and it's just realizing that possibly a change or an adjustment in the application of some of our rules are warranted.
That's a really good point. A lot of agencies believe we can't talk to industry at all because we've got a procurement coming up. We want to shatter that myth. You can engage industry. You just have to do it well. You have to do it right. You have to remove problems with conflicts of interest and things like that. It has to be open and fair competition. TechFAR talks a lot about that as well. And once again, the 18F consulting guys, which are a government agency, they work on this stuff almost exclusively, so they're more than happy to help with it. But it's all up and up, and it's a really good, for me, it's a really good thing because it drives my industry to be better. I really want to see the industry get better. I think we've hit a lull for a long time, and we're not progressing as fast as we should be. And now we're starting to spark it off again, and that makes me happy because I like leaning forward into it. So the more competition, the better. As long as we're doing it right, as long as we're doing real open competition. So.
I can't tell you how much I love hearing people talk about the FAR. It just gives me shivers. So any more questions out there? You won't get this august group here very much longer. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming to our session. We appreciate it, and we look forward to seeing you guys again soon.